Hi, Jacek here. We are going to be painting in Rebel a landscape from a photo reference, and this place is in eastern Tasmania and it's called Desolated Pavement. It's a wonderful spot, not far away from Hobart, so we're going to be trying to capture that and the feeling of sort of after rain vibes where we have this puddles of water scattered on in between the crevices of the rock on the beach. With this beautiful texture on the edge of the sea. And I've taken this photo right there, trying to find something that is not a hugely complicated landscape for this exercise, because we're trying to fit in the recording in 20 minutes. I might speed up some sections of that, but let's try to paint this in Rebel using the bristle brushes. And I have a couple of my favorites here that I've already isolated, which is bristle wide, bristle flat, flat dry, just to get maybe some texture on that rusty looking rock here. We're going to be painting this reflection and try to achieve stacking in terms of the depth of the painting, where we'll have deeper blacks here in the foreground and then medium blacks in medium sections of the painting, and then lifted blacks there in the back where we can see the progression of atmospheric perspective. So I'm not gonna be trying to directly copy this this photograph. I'll be rather trying to create a sketch first with similar looking composition, but maybe a little bit different. So I'm using the reference image here, which you can drop in, and you can also adjust the opacity if you like, but I'm going to just keep it in there and create a sketch. So let's rename this guy here. We're just gonna call it sketch, and I'm just gonna use pencil to sketch the composition. I'm thinking to use the thirds composition here, and when holding shift I can establish my horizon line, maybe something like that, and then we can sketch that background mountain there, somehow that where the clouds will be above. Maybe I can push it down slightly more so we have enough space to feature this beautiful sky there. Okay, and then we'll establish the line of the water, how it's gonna be connecting to the landmass there in the back, and our hero rock will be somewhere here. What I'm trying to do here is establish a intersection of the horizon line and our subject rock. It's always a nice idea to have the those lines intersecting rather than touching to what we call a tangent, where lines would touch. For example, if I had this rock touching this line there or there, this is what we would call a tangent. So we try to avoid that and cross. So as you can see, that rock here, we're going to be crossing the horizon line. And then we will have this cracked texture line here of that tessellated rock going across. What we would need also is that medium plane. So we will try to have this really nice sharp edge on this guy. And let's say our medium plane will go there. And then a little bit, as you can see over there, there's that elevated section of the beach where we can just lift it off. So it sort of intersect with the background hill there. I'm trying to get a nice sort of sharp shape here on this guy. Maybe, like I said, not copying that exactly what we have on the photo, but something that are gonna look interesting, and then we will have that edge there on a slightly different angle. Something like that could work good. I mean, again, I'm not probably 100% going to stick to that necessarily. This is just to guide me. So we can reduce the opacity of this guy, or you can even lift it up above your painting. Maybe we do this for now. Let's just drop another layer here, and then we can call it background. I always find it's good to stay organized and name your layers. And then in terms of color, I'll be sampling here, one note here on my bristle brush, if I bring my properties. Now let's just talk about a little bit about the style. So I guess we can call that sort of digital impressionism. I like to call this kind of paintings where we'll be staying quite loose, but we want to have a nice variety of color, and I will definitely be using the pigmentation feature where the colors mix on the canvas like in real life, and also definitely keeping some impasto effect. As you can see, also I have a art pen. I'm using the Wacom tablet Intuos and art pen, which allows me to, you see I'm rotating the pen in my hand, which allows me to turn the direction of the brush the way I want. I find this is really good. So if you feel like you want to elevate your paintings, I'd recommend getting one of those brushes. Alright, so turning on the noise on a bristle, which will give me this kind of a mix of different paint in a stroke. As you can see here, I'm getting this nice variety, different hues, different values in single stroke. Another thing that I'm activating is the different noise per stroke. So if you pay attention here, each stroke gives me slightly different tone, value, and hue, which I feel it will work really nice with getting this extra variety and depth and richness in color of your painting. Alright, so this is the brush I'll be using. For the background, I can also activate that. So this is enable. Maybe set that to, let's say, 15. I always forget the tab doesn't work on this one. Okay, so bristle white I will use on the background. So I just need to click in that area, type the value. Here we go. Enable that, enable that. Maybe this one increase slightly to 10. Alright, and we can start painting our background. One other thing I want to mention here, that I'm jumping between the brush and the blend tool. So N and B, on and off. They are located nicely next to each other on the keyboard, which I find is very helpful. Now control and drag will allow me to change the size of the brush. Okay, so let's start with our background. I'm going to just sample color from here and just start placing the strokes on our sky. Just check my impasto amount. So this is enabled to 100%. Okay, good. So I'm just looking at this photo and just trying to see what the clouds are doing there, and trying to hit those brush strokes with a similar character and direction. That's what's happening on the background. I can feel I can bring that photo again here, that the cloud sort of wraps around that mountain in the back. So that's what we're going to try to achieve here. Alright, so we're doing this little, and you see how nice variety I'm getting there. This is really awesome. I love that. And if you find it is too much, you can decrease these values, or I'm just jumping back to my blender brush and I can just blend that in if it's just a bit too much in some areas. Right, now that value over there is slightly darker, so we're gonna go a little bit darker there and just indicate that there is that sort of stormy section just above. Also, if I just hold it gradually and sort of gently, I can then start blending, because my brush is set on paint and blend at the same time. Maybe just went a little bit too far there, so just gonna brighten it up slightly more. Get that nice character there. These clouds sort of wrapping around the mountain, and maybe blend that a little bit more again. Okay, And then we have this really brighter section there. I could sample there from the painting. Just indicate that there is the opening there far back. That will be more prominent once we start to add the colors that are right next to it. Okay, now we're gonna add in our mountain. Again, trying to indicate as much directional vegetation, sort of how it wraps around the mountain and how it grows sort of in that arch and sort of following the slopes of the mountain. So trying to show that in how I operate with my brush. So let's say that's our background here. Perhaps I can mix a little bit of these greens here, so sampling that color there. Let's see if we can push it towards a little bit more greener sections. That's a little bit too much, maybe something like that. Yes, that's good variety. And also I'm already thinking that the rear sections of that mountain can be slightly brighter. Also, you see how the top of the mountain is already covered by clouds, so we're going to try to achieve that as well and mix that right on that edge where the clouds are touching our mountain, so that we're showing that there is that intersection. We're keeping our sketch on top just to see what's happening with our composition. These darker sections there, maybe we can add that little bit more there. I see the stormy clouds sort of wrapping around here a little bit more. That's blending in a little bit. I feel maybe that section needs a little bit more definition, is slightly flat. Just adding some bit more texture here. Okay, carry on, get some water in. So still using my background, we're gonna have a nice plane of water here. Like we said, we're gonna open the sky here, and there is that sort of vegetation forest there in the back, going further so we can show that as well. See how nice variety I'm getting there in color. Love that. Alright, let's establish our foreground and background. So we can gradually start sampling here. Still using background. Perhaps I'm going to separate. Let's create midground layer now. Just call that midground. And then we're sampling from here. Now sometimes I'm using the mixer here if I need particular color. It's not as responsive as this main area, but if you're looking for particular color, then you could start mixing it here and sort of create a color in between the two, and you can directly sample from here as well. But I'm sampling from here, just adding that plane. I'm just going across the whole. I think I sampled the color from the wheel there. Across the whole canvas, and gradually going darker as we come closer to the camera. At the moment this is just a temporary treatment here because we're going to be adding details. Alright, so from this point we're going to speed it up, and I'm just going to show you the process, how I create and how I complete the painting. So just adding, looking back and forth into my reference and just looking how I want to depict certain areas and how I want the impression to be and the feeling that the viewer should have when looking at the painting. So just adding details gradually. I also have another reference open on the left hand side on my screen where I can see a little bit more of what details I want to show, what areas I want to skip, and where I want to add more definition and where I want this painting to have a looser feeling. I feel this is always nice to be able to, and it's also quite hard to resist, to be honest, where you just want all the areas of the painting to be fully detailed, but I actually find, and if you look at the work of some prominent painters, where the painting can be detailed in some areas but be very loose on the other. So that's what I'm trying to do here, and put the main focus on the hero rock, where I'll be trying to get as much details and definition and sharp edges, and treat perhaps the rest of the painting and the surroundings a little bit more looser. So then it's clear what the focus of the painting is and what the subject is. So just swapping between different brushes here and trying to get a nice indication of light edge on that hero rock, and then detailing the background, the midground. Now trying to get these puddles of water in between the rock. And also, as you can see, sometimes I'm swapping into the grayscale. This is something I learned being in the film industry and being a matte painter, where sometimes it's hard to see the values in certain areas of the painting, so that swapping into the grayscale will allow you to see exactly where the painting is too dark, one is too bright. Also, as you can see, I just added a sort of low-hanging fog in the background mountain there, just to give it sort of a nice feeling of sort of after rain atmosphere, where there's that lower hanging fog in the behind the rock, closer to that mountain in the back. And now just breaking up some of these reflections, just to cheat our brains that this really is a reflection, just looking back and forth into the photo of what can be done to preserve that impression and give the feeling of water being on the ground. And now just detailing, like I said, in the selective areas, not everywhere, just adding these little bits of detail and the key elements like a darker reflection in the water of some of the features of the ground. Now looking at some of the highlights and the sort of brighter sections of the rock, and wherever I see fit, adding a bit of a highlight, bit of a shadow, trying to also indicate a little bit of a underlying structure under the water there. That's a very subtle thing, and now the detailing pass. One of my favorite things to do in a painting, where you're just adding just little bits of these sharper details. It's very easy to overdo that, but I love that part of painting where you're just adding these extra touches to make it to come to life. And again, jumping back and forth again in a grayscale, just to see which areas needs my attention. And here is the final section of the video, where I went back to real-time recording, just to show you the very last touches, where I'm just looking again and trying to see what else can be done, and what elements can help to get the impression that I'm looking for. Just breaking up some of that reflection there in the very foreground. I feel there's that kind of a darker edge, which not necessarily is helping me, and breaking up some of this edge of the reflection there as well. And yeah, this is basically done. I feel that is enough detail for me at this point. The total painting time was around 1.5 hours. So like I said, I speed up some of the sections, and here we can have a look at the close-up of the painting. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you followed along with me, and I hope we can do another one in the future, and you join me there.